Hi everybody, this is Derek from CloudAccess.net. I have here Andrei from the RSJoomla support team who will be giving a presentation on the basic feature of RSForm Pro. Thank you for agreeing to this, Andrei, and up to you.
Hello, hello. It's a pleasure meeting you and having this opportunity here. Uh, as a quick note, RSForm Pro is one of our most popular components, and we're working to towards improving it every single new version that we release. In this recording, I'm hoping to do a good job of presenting you the basic features of how to create your first form and display it on your site, and maybe talk about some features that will most likely be useful for starting users with Joomla. As you can see on the screen now, this is the basic dashboard for the component. You've got several areas of configuration available, which speak for themselves. Manage forms will provide you with the list of all the forms you created for your website. Manage submissions will allow you to see the forms entries. Every form you record submissions for will be listed here, and you can select and view its submissions. Manage directories was a feature we introduced a while back that takes the submissions one step further and allows you to create a front-end listing of the form submissions and also allow users to edit their own submissions. The backup section will allow you to create a backup of your forms and submissions. This is useful if you want to migrate from a local host or staging server to your live domain. The configuration section will provide you the general configurations of your component. And if you install additional plugins for RSForm Pro for like payment or other third-party integrations, you'll be able to set up the credentials to connect to that service or application. The documentation links back to our site. Here you'll find all the documentation you need for every feature available in the component. Let's start off and see. The first time you install the component, you'll have two default example forms. The first one is a single page form, while the second one is basically the same form, but spread over multiple pages. You can create you can create additional forms by clicking the new button or the new wizard. The difference is the new button will just take you to the form builder where you will start adding fields, while the new wizard is more beginner friendly and will provide you with several steps to take in order to complete the basic setup for your form. Here is the first tab of configuration available for your form. You can see a list of all the fields available on the left side. And as soon as we start adding fields to the form, a builder will be provided here on the right side, and you can start controlling the layout directly from here. First, we would add an email field, set the caption. We can set the field to required, so users need to fill it in, and also set the validation rule, let's say email address. We can control the validation message as well, and other attributes for the field here. Once we click save, the field is added and the initial row for your form has been created. With the help of this row, you can start controlling the layout. You can choose between 1 column, 2, 3, and 4 columns. We chose a maximum of 4 columns because we wanted to avoid having users jam up the form by making 12 columns and then having the fields display really awkwardly because they don't have enough space. So for now, we will start with 1 column. We will not add another row. And here we can request the first name. And the second name. After adding the fields, you can easily drag them to the other column. Now let's add a message. And the form simple, this is a simple contact form. So as you can see, there is a warning at top saying that you don't have a submit button. Without a submit button, you cannot submit the form. So let's add this real fast. And the basic setup for our forms is already done. Do you have any questions?
At this point, just one. That column setup and drag and drop feature, because I see this is Joomla 4. Are the same features available for RSForm Pro for Joomla 3?
Yes,
Okay,
we are
cool.
using the same features for both. It's basically the same component, but we ensure the compatibility with both Joomla versions.
Okay, that's cool. No further questions at this point.
Yes. Um, After adding all of our fields, we can go to the form properties, and here we can start to customize the form. If we take a quick look in the front end, the form is not looking so good. This is because of the layout. By default, responsive layout is used for the forms, but since Joomla 4 uses Bootstrap 5, we will need to select this, and the form layout will be changed to use the appropriate classes for a proper display. We just save, refresh, and these are now shown way more neatly. Beside the basic layout, when you choose a different layout for your form, the HTML code will change to the default version for the selected framework. If you want to manually edit the code, you can also just disable the auto-generate layout and add the HTML code you want. And as you can see, it's reflected in the front end. This is mainly for more advanced users.
One question here. Can CSS code be used here as well?
You can use it here as well, but we have a separate section for that, which I'll provide an example in the following section. What I wanted to point out here, like each form field is represented in the front end with the help of field placeholders. As you can see here, there's an email caption, email body, and email validation. These are the placeholders that will be used by the component to display these elements of the field in the front end. For example, if I remove the email caption and save. Go to the front end, the caption we set up in the field configuration is no longer shown. And if you mess up the layout, you can just click the auto generate and it will automatically put the default code back in. You were asking about the CSS and JavaScript. This tab was specifically set up separately so you can avoid having trouble finding or crowding the HTML layout. So you can use this section instead to add your desired CSS definitions. You can just do, this will not look pretty, but it's a very fast example. And we easily change the labels to red. Moving on to the form info tab. These are the basic settings for your form. Like you can publish or unpublish the form, set the access level, set the form type, title. Usually these are the same. You can choose to enable the Ajax validation. This is helpful if you want to validate the fields without reloading the page. And the most common example would be when using a file upload field. If the page is refreshed, the file upload is removed and you will need to add it again. So you can just enable this and the validation will be performed. And even if you encounter a validation error, you will not lose the selected uploaded file. The following fields are setting the required it's kind of a big message. You can play around with it as you see fit and control everything regarding your form here. The thank you message is the message users will encounter after submitting your form successfully. Oh, I believe it was first. Here, if you want to make the thank you message more personal, you can use field placeholders that return the value entered by the user in the field to make the user feel more, I don't know, more important, or having a feel that his submission matters for the entire process. We set this up and now let's go. We refresh. As you can see, the first name we entered in the field is also presented here. The return URL is the URL you will be redirected to after submitting the form, displaying the thank you message, and clicking the continue button. You can use this if you want to redirect your users to the front page after viewing the thank you message, or immediately redirecting them to a specific article or page. It is up to your own scenario. The following options will allow you to stop storing information in the database. You can use this to have the information available or sending out emails, but not store it in your database. We also introduced a option with the GDPR standard that after a configurable amount of days, the submissions of this form will be automatically deleted. Okay, then moving on to the attributes. This is mostly for advanced users. You can control the action, the name, and classes used for the form. By default, it's user form, and you can use it to start styling your elements. If you want to target a specific element just from your form, you can use the ID and then set the element you want to style. Meta tags allows you to just set the description and keywords for the page. But the most important parts, I believe, are the emails that will be triggered when the submission is made. These have been improved again and again based on our users' feedback. And the best way to make sure a submission was recorded is to receive a notification in your inbox regarding the form, because I don't know how many people will check daily if their contact form, for example, has any submissions. In this configuration area, your basic setup will require you to set a from email. As you can see now, it is global mail from. This will take the email you have set in your Joomla global configuration and the name. You can also change these to whatever you want. Then set the recipient. The most common use of this field is just to use the email value placeholder. This will return the email submitted by the user in your form, and you will make sure that the submitting user will receive a notification informing him that his submission was recorded. The subject field and the message. You can also use placeholders in this section. Choose between a text and HTML version and the auto-generate email message. If you have a long form and you want to add all the form placeholders that return value submitted by the user to your email body, you can simply enable this option. If we save and then we go to the front end, and submit. I'm using mail to disk, so we will be able to see the put here. This is the message that was generated by the form when the submission was made. And beside the user email, you can also set up additional emails, like the administrator also receiving a notification, or additional emails based on how many emails you want to trigger through this form. You can use the user email for one person, admin for the second, additional for more emails. It's basically up to how many people you want to notify. One thing to note, in the to field, you can also type in multiple emails separated by a comma, and the notification will be sent to all the emails listed here. It's not advised to use multiple emails here, because most hosting servers restrict the number of emails that can be triggered at once. The last email available here is the delete email. And this is sent when a submission is deleted either from the front end using the submissions directory, or through the global deletion placeholder, which is a specific placeholder that can be sent in the user or admin email in order to delete a submissions. Now to the more advanced sections, the PHP scripts. This allows you to trigger custom PHP scripts during your submission process. And they have, as you can see at the top, different times when they are triggered. When the form is displayed, this section can be used. For example, if you want to disable a form after a specific date, you can just add a PHP script here that checks the current date. And if it's past a certain point, you can replace the entire form layout with a simple message that submissions are no longer accepted. You can replace the form layout with this variable using a string replace function, very common in PHP. The second section for adding scripts, it's when the form is processed, you can access all the data submitted by the user in this section. And one of the best examples I can give here is that you can make a custom validation for your form. And if this is not met, you can stop the actual submission using the invalid array. We have various examples on this in our online documentation that users can check and see and maybe implement for their own forms. The last section is scripts after the form has been processed. And this will be triggered after the submission is made and recorded in your database. The easiest example here would be to add a additional message to your thank you message based on the user input, or if you want to have a quiz form and calculate a total, and based on that total display something in your thank you message based on the result. The PHP email scripts will allow you to control the emails you have defined for your form, the user admin, and additional. These will be triggered before the actual emails are sent. Thus, you can also disable a particular email if a condition is not met by removing the from and to headers of the email. Next section would be the mappings. This is also for more advanced users. By default, the component will store the submissions in its own database tables. If you want to map the form data to a different table in your database, you can easily do this by first starting the configuration, select the method you want to use, insert. You can connect to your local or to a remote database, connect to the database, select the table you want to add, for example, in content, then set all the desired values that you want to add. In order to add the information submitted by the user, again, you will need to use the field placeholders that return the value. Conditional fields is also a highly requested feature. Users want to have more dynamic forms, not have like a 50 fields form that the user need to scroll through in order to complete the submission. And with the help of this, you can just set up fields to be displayed only if certain conditions are met. A very simple example of this would be, let's say we add a drop-down field, show message, and we add 2 items, no and yes. We'll just place this above the message field. And although we added the field, if we refresh the front end, we will see that the message field is still displayed. By going here and adding a new condition, we can control to show both the label and the field message if all the following conditions are met. And our condition is the show message dropdown needs to be yes. Save the condition, and the condition has been added to our form. Now, if we reload the page, the message field is no longer displayed unless we click the yes. If the field in question is required, it will not trigger a validation error if the field is not displayed on your form. In this case, the message field, although you can set it to be required, it will not trigger a validation error.
So basically, the condition overrides the need for the validation of a field.
Yes, because it would be uh, it would not have any reason to validate that field because it's not hidden, and if it's not hidden, it's not required for the submission process.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a very cool feature.
A very interesting fact you need to be careful here. Above the forms, you will notice a language selection. If your website is in multiple language, you will need to make sure that your conditional fields, conditional logics are set up for each language separately. For example, if the form had another language available, let's say Romanian, if I set up my conditional statements only in English, then on the Romanian version of the page, it will not be taken into account.
I see. I'm guessing this somehow stems from how Joomla itself handles languages through different files and different language strings.
Yes, for example, here in the drop down, you'll notice a small flag here.
Hmm.
This points to a field that can be set up separately for each language you have installed. So you can have no and yes for English. You can have the corresponding translations for these in Romanian when using the Romanian language.
Gotcha.
Postal location, this is also more for advanced users. You can submit your form information to a third party like Zapier or another service like this based on your form and your scenario. And the calculations, this pretty much speaks for itself. If you have like an order form or something along those lines, you can set up calculations between your form fields similar to the conditional logic. You just enter the result field and the equation you want to use with the operators above. And of course, you need to use the field placeholders that return the value, second name. And if we go to the front end, 0, but if you put 1 and 2, it should calculate.
I think you forgot. Yeah, you don't have the
Uh,
colon value
the
after
value
syntax.
name, yes. And there you go. RSForm Pro also has integrations with different payment processors, and the payment package will provide you a different set of fields that can be added, like a single product and multiple product fields, and those will calculate the total directly. You do not necessarily need to use this. The best example I can think of for this calculation is the basic quote form, right? You have all the options available, you calculate the total, and you send the code to the user so he can decide if he wants to go through with the payment or not. This will not allow the form to process payments in any way. It will just calculate the total and display it and provide it to the user.
Right, right. If you, but as you said, there is an option to actually process payments since you have integration with payment processors.
Yes, yes, yes.
So in the end, you can use RSForms Pro as a simple e-commerce platform.
Yeah, a very simple one, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, after configuring your form, uh, let's see how we can publish this in the front end. I use the preview one because it's very easy to just see the form in the front end and see if the fields are properly set up. I think we should delete the calculation first. Yeah, I already did. That's good. And now we can add this to our menu. We want the first form to be displayed. This is the basic Joomla menu item configuration. And if we access it here, we already have the form ready to go. Aside from the menu item, we can also display the form inside module positions and articles. In order to publish the form in a module position, you will need to install the RSForm Pro module. This will have a similar configuration. Just select the form, select the status, select the position, and most important, select the pages where you want this to be displayed. The most common question we encountered during our support is people configuring the first page but not assigning it to any pages. So after we assign this, we can go here. This is not looking so good because the space required is so little for our form, but maybe we can do something to have it show a bit better. We can just and this is displayed way better now.
But if you want essentially the same form but with different now you said different columns, different rows, and so on, then you will essentially have to create separate forms for that in the component itself, right?
I'm not quite sure I understand.
Okay,
If you want to have like the same, you want to have a simpler form in the module position that serves the same purpose as the main form?
I mean, like if now, let's say now you go to the RSForm Proform menu item, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean the
if you want to
layout.
have different layouts for the form, yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
right. Add we can also add the form directly in an article. I already had this created, but in order to add a form to your article, you'll need to first install the content plugin and make sure it is enabled. And after having this enabled, you can go to your article and use a simple uh, shortcode to display the form. This is composed of the string RSForm and the form ID, which I believe ours
It was 5.
is 5. Yeah. Add a new menu item. And as you can see, you have the form here as well.
Right. So just to have all the info in one place, can you now show our viewers where exactly can we find that form ID?
Yes. Form ID can be found here at the last column on the general listing of your form fields.
Okay. Cool.
One more thing I forgot to mention, in RSForm Pro you have a very good control over the email body. Thus, for example, if we do not show the message field, we shouldn't send this in the email body as well. Thus, when editing the field, if we just type in message value, each time the email is generated, we will have the value we submitted in the message field, right? As you can see, we have the image, the message here. In the message body, we can just edit this and use something we call if clauses. If show message, which was our drop down, is yes, then we will show the message. What this if clause does, will check the value submitted by the user in the dropdown. If it's yes and he completes the message, it will display it. If not, the email body will not contain the message at all. you can see, it was not filled in at all. Now let's take a look at the submissions listing. The most popular one is the manage directories because it has a more advanced functionality. Here we will need to first configure our directory for front-end listing. As you can see, it's not configured. The PDF, CSV, and support is used if you want to export a submission to these formats. You can do so from the front end. The permissions tab, here you can control which user groups can edit the submissions. You can select one of the available Joomla user groups or just set edit own submissions. If you select edit own submissions, if users are logged in while submitting the form, they will be able to access this menu item and edit only their own submissions. They will not be able to edit submissions made by other users. For our test, we can just use the public. The delete submissions is the same, but instead of editing, you can just delete. This is also advised to only allow users to delete their own submissions. We will save this first here. Here in the fields, we have several columns that will allow us to control the actual listing of the form submissions. As you can see, showing listing. This is the column that controls which fields are displayed in the initial listing of submissions, like the general listing. We can have date submitted and maybe email. The second column will control which fields you can search in. If you have a long list of submissions, you can search your fields to find a particular one. The third column will control which fields can be edited in the front end. Let's say this. Showing details, as the name implies, will control which fields will be displayed in the details view of the submission. In our initial listing, we'll only see the submission date and the email. And if we want the rest, like first name, second name, and message, we'll need to go to the details section. The last controls the export, and we can choose which fields we want to export if you want to use this feature. Save. Next, the fields that are selected here also affect the HTML here. Similar to the form layout when configuring your form, this can be shown in a set of predefined formats, like in inline, two lines, based on your desired display. And if this is not up to your standards, you can just disable the auto-generate layout and manually type in the HTML code for the listing of the details page. As in the form, you will need to use the caption and value placeholders to display the actual information submitted by the user. Very easy way if you don't want to remember the field names or stuff like that. You have a toggle quick add, which will list all the available placeholders that you can use in this layout. The CSS and JavaScript speaks for itself, and the emails, you can configure emails in this section as well. And of course, you can use PHP scripts to further customize the layout and functionality of your directory listing. After configuring this, I can also enable the CSV. We close this section, and as you can see, the label changed to configured. Now, when we go to the menus, we add a new menu. for RSForm Pro, submissions directory. Here we need to select the form that has the directory configured. As you can see, the first two forms cannot be selected because we didn't configure the directory for those particular ones. We only have it for this form, and we enable the directory. We have saved, and in the front end, we will see all the submissions, test submissions we have made in the front end with the email and date submitted as the initial information displayed. If we go to the View tab, based on the layout we selected, all the information from that particular submission was made. If we choose to delete this, it will be removed because we already had the permission to do so in the directory. When editing a submission, you will need to take into account that this will not have the same functionality as making your initial submission. As you can see, all the fields and all the values are already displayed. It will not take into account the conditional logic fields you have set. We can add it. And as you can see, it was added to the submission. Dashboard. I think that covers a basic setup of RSForm Pro. Do you have any questions regarding the functionality, the form, the building process?
No, at this point I don't have any questions. You've explained everything very clearly. So if you believe that's all that covers it, so then again, thank you very much for agreeing to this presentation, and thank you to everybody who is watching it right now. And I guess that will be all for now. Thank you very much, Andrei.